Say you've done a simple experiment where you tried different brands of paper towels, cut squares, and measured how much water each square absorbed. And you had a data set that looks much like this one in front of you. Now, in your lab notebook, this looks great, but we really like to look at data graphically. And in order to do that, we also need to compare averages. So you've done 5 trials. You could manually calculate the average for each one. However, that's very time consuming, and making a graph is somewhat complicated. Now, it's much easier if you input this data into Excel and let Excel do the graph for you. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to open up Excel, which you can see on my computer is down here in the lower left. So you want to double click on the Excel icon, and Excel will open up. I'm going to make this smaller so I can look at my data table and Excel at the same time. For you, this might be easier because your data table will be in your lab notebook. So what I want to do is first set up my columns in Excel. Now, as you can see, my first column is my independent variable, my brand of paper towel. So I'm just going to go ahead and type that in. All right. Now, as you can see, brand of paper towel goes way over column A in Excel. So what I'm going to do is put my cursor right between the A and the B columns, and as you can see, I get the bar with 2 little arrows, and I'm going to double click. Now what that will do is automatically resize my column to fit the text that's inside of it. Alright, now this is where things get tricky, because as you can see on my lab notebook data table, I have 5 columns, 1 for each trial, and above those I have 1 big broad column. This is pretty easy to do when you're drawing. It's a little more complicated in Excel. So what I want is a column that's actually 5 columns, or a cell that's 5 columns wide. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on my first trial column, and I actually want to highlight 5 columns across. And if you look on the upper left, you can see where it says 1RX5C. That tells me that it is in fact 5 columns. So when I have all 5 of those highlighted, I want to go here to this little button, the Merge and Center button, and I'm going to click that once. Right, now I have a column that's 5 columns wide. So I'm going to click in there, and I'm going to type in amount of water absorbed. Right. I'm not going to forget to include my units. So I'm good there. And then what I can do is below that, type in trial 1. Remember to write trial, not trail. Trial 3. Trial 4. You can easily toggle across. What I'm doing at the end of here is I'm hitting tab to go over to the next cell. Trial 5. Okay. Now I'm going to make a column for averages. Now, you may notice that it's somewhat hard to see the cell lines on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight my table, right? And I also know that I'm going to want 3 more rows for my data. So I'm going to highlight that area. I'm going to actually make my borders black. So what I'm going to do is go over here where it says font. I'm going to click borders, drop down arrow, and I want all borders. So I'm going to click on all borders. Now you can see I have all of these. However, if you look back at your lab notebook table, we have the brand of paper towel cell is actually 2 rows tall, as is the average cell. So what I want to do here is I'm going to highlight where I wrote brand of paper towel and the cell below it. And just like we did with amount of water absorbed, I'm going to click the Merge and Center button, and that'll merge that. I can also click the same thing on the average, highlight those 2 cells, click the Merge and Center button. If I don't want my brand of paper towel cell to be quite so wide, because it's now 2 cells tall, I can also go up here to this button, which is the Wrap Text button. If I click that, if I then go and drag my column a little narrower, it'll stack the words. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my data. I have brand A, brand B, autofill, I don't want that, just B, and C. And now I'm going to go ahead and enter my numbers. So I can see that I've got 26. And again, I'm going to use the tab to move across just because it's easier. You can click just as well. 27. Okay, to the next one, brand B, I'm going to have to move my boxes here. Brand B, 37, 36, 35, 39, 38. And brand C, we had 26, 23, 23, 24, 24. All right, so now I've entered all of my data into Excel. I'm going to bring Excel back into the middle. My Lab Notebook data table is no longer useful, so I'm actually going to maximize this. Now what I want to do is to calculate the averages, which you could do by adding them all together and dividing by 5 each time. However, it's much faster if we ask Excel to do it. So the first thing we want to do is to type in an equal sign. And what that does is it tells the computer that we want it to do math. Now, I have the equal sign, and if you look up here, there's a function button, fx. So I could click that fx button, and it's going to give me some options. Right? These will typically be in the most recently used first. Sum and average are two pretty common ones. So what I want to do is calculate an average. So I'm going to click on average, and I'm going to click OK. And this box is going to pop up. Now right here where it says number 1, I want to make sure that the contents of that box are highlighted, and then I'm going to click this small button with the red arrow just next to it. Right? And that's going to get small. What I'm going to do is to highlight the boxes that I want to average. So I want to average the 5 cells here. So I'm going to highlight those. I've got the marching ants going around them. And I'm going to hit the enter key. And this box comes back, and I say, yep, I got the marching ants where I want to march, around the numbers I want to average, and I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, an average displays here. It's important that whenever you do this, you want to, before you tell the computer to calculate an average, you want to click on the cell where you want the average displayed. Right, so the same thing, I could do it here, equals. For a shortcut, the most recently used function is actually, when you hit equals, will appear up here to the left, so I could just click average. Right, same thing, I don't want G3, but I want to make sure this is highlighted. Click that, highlight those cells, hit enter, and then hit enter again. There's also a shortcut. Once I've done this now, this isn't a big problem to do it repeatedly in this small data table because I only have 3 different brands, but if I had tested 20 or 30 brands of paper towels, this could get tedious. There's a little trick, because what you've told the computer to do is to average the 5 numbers to the left of that cell. So if I highlight, I'm going to actually delete what I just did. So as long as I've done it in the top cell, it says average the 5 numbers to the left of me, and that's what I want to do below. I can highlight those cells. I can go up here to the right where it says fill, click that button, click fill down, and the computer will automatically repeat the formula, but moving down a row. So in this cell it says average the 5 numbers to the left. Here it's again averaging 5 numbers to the left. So now I have a data table and I have my averages filled in, which is great. Now I want to make a graph. Now keep in mind that when you're making graphs in science, you only want to graph the averages. You don't need to graph each individual trial. So what I'm going to do is a slight shortcut. I want to graph, these are my x's, my independent variable on my x-axis. I want my dependent variable, my average amount of water absorbed, on my y-axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight my x-axis numbers. It's important that you do that first. So for me, that's going to be these cells. It says branded paper towel, A, B, C. Now I want to highlight my averages, but I don't want to highlight everything in between. So what I'm going to do is hold down the control key while I click on my y's. And what that does is it tells the computer to highlight both the first group and the second group. So now I have both my x values and my y values highlighted. And I'm going to go up to the top to insert. Now I have to decide, I want to insert a chart, and I need to decide which type of chart. Given that in this case my x's, my independent variable is categories, A, B, and C, and my dependent variable is numbers, I want to go ahead and do what we would call a bar graph. However, I want the bars going up and down, so I'm going to do it in terms of a column graph. So I'm going to click column, and you have a lot of different options. I'm going to go for the most basic 2D column. And here we have a graph. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. So you can see that we have a blank here, and this is sort of an issue. This is unfortunately something that sometimes happens when you have split cells. So what I'm going to do is actually delete this, and I'm going to go ahead, try again. This time, instead of highlighting the tops, I'm just going to highlight the data. Usually you can highlight your labels as well, but because of the merged cells, the computer's kind of confused. So I'm going to do the same thing, highlight just my data. So just these cells that have A, B, C. I'm going to hold down the control. I'm going to highlight just the cells that have the averages. I'm going to go to Insert, Column, 2D Column. Didn't work. All right. Ah, I highlighted a little bit too far. Yay! Alright, so we have our A, B, and C. Right, we have our columns, we have our numbers. What we're missing is a title for the graph and some headings on our axes. So what you want to do is if you go up here where it says chart layout, this should pop up. If it doesn't, what you want to do is click on chart tools and click on design. And what you want to do is in the chart layouts, there's a lot of different options. So you want to kind of scroll through and find one that has a title and labels for both axes. So this is the choice that I'm going to want to do. So I'm going to click on this. And it has space for chart title, axis title, axis title. What I don't need in this case, because I only have one color of bars, I don't need a legend. So what I'm going to do is just click on the legend, click delete. Now, my x-axis, as we saw in our data table, was brand of paper towel. And I'm just going to write that in. On my y-axis, it's average amount of water it absorbs. So I'm going to write abbreviate average. AVG, amount of water, I'm going to put H2O, absorbed, and then make sure I include my units in milliliters. Alright, so now I have my axes labeled. The last thing I need to do is give my chart a title. It should be some kind of descriptive title. It does not need to be the title of your experiment. So in this case, I'm going to put water absorbed by different brands of paper towel. Alright, so now I have a graph. I can go ahead and do some dragging. Like I don't like that this is a little off-centered, so I can click on it, drag that up a little bit, make it aesthetically pleasing, and whenever I'm ready, I can paste this into a Word document, into a lab, print it. If I click on it and then hit print, it'll print as a full screen. So that's the basics of how to calculate averages and make a graph in Excel.